There's a question about how to create online culture just in within remote teams, celebrating remote teams. So how to create online culture or retain talent. Candice, maybe you can take us through this. How do you create the online culture so that this employee qualifies to be celebrated when they become one of the top performers? So how do you create that culture online? At the same time, how do you retain talent? So that not only celebrating one person, I know some people will feel, okay, this person is the most celebrated in every month, every quarter. Why not me? You know, so how do you guys roll out that? How is your method of determining this employee is actually the employee of the month, employee of the year, etc., and also just to retain talent?
So I think the one big thing is that the organization's values has to be communicated from the start and throughout every single channel and every single interaction. I think it shouldn't be about creating a new online culture, especially if you come from being in office, going to remote. There shouldn't be that big of a shift of, okay, now we need to create this online remote culture. It should be your company's culture that you're able to adapt to the remote environment. You want to have the same values, you want to have the same principles going throughout, and just make sure that it is adapted and communicated widely enough and installed really in the day-to-day. And I think that's one of the best ways to ensure that the people you've hired are individuals who resonate with the values that you also hold as an organization. And then I mentioned earlier that remote work itself is a retention tool. So I haven't come across an instance where it's difficult for us to retain someone in the remote environment because, they're not enjoying working remotely. They want to be near an office. Like, I haven't come across that at YOCO. It's been a massive retention tool for us, especially for our tech hires. Can you imagine in South Africa, it was like the biggest thing that all of our techies could go to being fully remote instead of just one day remote, which used to be a perk before 2020. So now it is our main retention tool, one of our main retention tools that we actually have, which makes it ever so more important for us to make sure that we get this down 100% and that we navigate it properly as well. So managing teams remotely shouldn't change your current retention strategies either. You should already have training and development in place, continuous feedback on performance, and your globally benchmark benefits and salary packages and wellness initiatives. So these are things that you should already have in place and not just adopt because you're working remotely and now you need to try and keep these people here. Because I think when you start mobilizing your people as well to move globally, by being able to partner with an organization who can employ them elsewhere, you're exposing them to another country, you're exposing them to another market, and you need to work on keeping them with your organization, which means you need to keep them buying into your values, into your culture. They need to feel like they want to be at your organization regardless of where they're working. And then in terms of like employee of the month, we don't do employee of the month. We don't single out particular individuals. We celebrate everyone's productivity and performance equally. We love celebrating promotions in our weekly all hands or our monthly all hands. We're celebrating it on every single platform that we have, but we don't take the approach of singling individuals because we believe that everyone, has their level of performance that they contribute to. Everyone's contributing towards the bottom line. And everyone has their moment to shine, I think, as well. And it's important to give everyone that moment to shine.
Okay, thank you so much, Candice, for that. I believe we are all taking notes, and don't worry about it. We will send you a recording about these webinars that you can also go through with your team and maybe find new ways on how to manage remote teams. Moving forward, I would love to dive deep into remote teams collaboration, but before I go there, Paul has raised his hand. Please, Paul, proceed.
Yeah, I wanted to add on retaining remote teams. I think it's also very important that people who are working remote don't feel disadvantaged in the sense that they're not working, let's say, in the country that their company is HQ'd. And Candice mentioned something that is very, very important, that when I'm working remotely or when our employees are working remotely, they need to be able to enjoy the same benefits or the same perks or whatever that you offer to employees, let's say, who are closer to HQ, regardless of where they're working. And I think that is a motivation enough for them that they get to enjoy all the benefits of working remotely, and they don't find themselves as a disadvantage because of their working remotely. I know there have been debates around probably governments introducing taxes, higher tax for people who are working remotely. Another school of thought is that people who are working remotely probably needs to be paid less because they're not probably going to the office. But also there's also the other school of thought that companies are actually saving by having people working remotely. So I think from a culture perspective, I think it would be very, very important that as the employees that are working remotely also feel valued. They also feel that they're actually part and parcel of the company, and then wherever they are working, they feel that they're not disadvantaged because of the location where they are based.
Thank you so much, Paul. Candice, please proceed.
Sorry, Daisy. Paul just made a really great point over there about not letting your remote employees who are further away from the HQ feel disadvantaged. And that's one of the reasons why we've actually taken the approach of partnering with an organization like Workpay, who can legally employ people. You can hire people, if you've got ways of paying them, you can hire people across the globe as consultants, but it comes with tax implications for them. And usually they don't get benefits because a lot of the benefits come through payroll, which means you need to be an employee. And to a certain degree, it also doesn't give them the confidence to join a business that is only hiring people as a contractor. They want that employment relationship as well. And that's why companies like Workpay, I think, is so important for us to have to make this possible. So it's not just about so that we can go and hire someone in another country. It's so that someone in another country feels safe and they feel like an employee as well, because it does mean something to them when they have an employment relationship.
Okay, thank you for that, Candice. I would love to pass it over to Vamsi. What would you tell us about remote teams collaboration in Multiplier?
Right. No, for sure. So I think I've sort of spoken about it in the beginning, but just to sort of reiterate. So one of the things that I feel is very important is that there are quite a lot of ways to set this culture of collaboration within companies. It's extremely different for every company. The single size fits all may not work. So having a regular iteration to what you're doing once every 3 months, just doing a simple retro and understanding where we could have done things better with respect to collaboration, what went well, what did not go so well, what can be improved, etc. And actually taking the action to sort of put those new processes in place, right? I think that becomes very important. So over time, this compounds and really creates that very smooth machine of execution. So yeah, I believe the 2 points that I mentioned before of over communication and writing everything down, and combined with this iterative process, I think collaboration can be solved with it's just a matter of time.
Thank you for that, Vamsi. I will not release you for now. I want you to tell us something about, because you're a CPO. For those who don't know, a CPO is a Chief Product Officer. So how do you manage or monitor the time spent on projects so that they can deliver results in due time?
Right. So yeah, we do not work in that synchronous time tracking manner. We give our team the flexibility to set their own timings, just as long as they can let the team know when they will be working and when they will be available, and they're actually available at that time. That's good for us. Some people are night owls, some people work better in the mornings, some people may have some commitments during the day, maybe they want to take their kids to school. So we just do not we're just not okay with tracking people's time, asking them to check in and check out and stuff like that. I personally believe that that's kind of like a productivity killer. And of course, like, you won't be getting the best advantages of working remotely, right? One of the best advantages is that you can set your own timings, but you can still get the job done, right? So as long as we have very clear milestones, managers are responsible for setting very clear milestones which are reasonable. And as long as you're just tracking the milestones and whether they're moving accordingly, I don't think you need to go any level deeper into what employees are doing on a daily basis.
Thank you for that, Vamsi. Do you have any additional comments, Paul?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing, especially when working with a remote team, is that people need to understand what is expected of them. So when they do it, I think it's not a very big an issue, but also what is important is that they also need to appreciate that they are working probably in a team. So as much as probably I would want to work at 4 a.m. my time, like, are we working with somebody else whose 4 a.m. is probably midnight and they are not okay working at that time? So I think it's more or less like going all the way to a team level. So are we sure what we want to achieve? Has it been communicated clearly by our managers or by people who we report to? And if that is clear, are we also even able to go down lower as employees and figure out how are we going to collaborate this together, as opposed to, as Vamsi is saying, I don't even think it's possible for you to do time tracking for really remote teams. I think it would actually beat the whole essence of doing remote, considering that some people will be working at night and the others will be daytime for the other people. So it's actually very, very difficult to actually do it. But the most important thing is that are people able to come up with ways that they're able to collaborate, and as a company, as a team leaders, it's actually our responsibility to build those processes and to actually avail the tools that would allow people to be able to do so and not able to actually report their milestones, what is expected of them. And this will be different from team to team. Engineering will have different tools to allow them to do so. Business will have different tools. Even people, operations will have different tools to allow them to do so.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Paul. In regards to collaboration, there's a question which came in. How do you ensure the employees have better internet infrastructure, different political relations between countries, and also alternate payment methods? I know we are yet to get there. These are some of the points which have been mentioned as challenges, which we will cover by the end of this webinar. But just take us through, how do you ensure the employees have internet infrastructure? Do you provide internet for employees? Do you pay for internet subscription for employees? Or how do you go around it? Over to you, Paul.
So I would say with what I've seen with companies doing, and this is generally regarded or put as a benefit to some of the employers, is that what I've seen some do is that they give a cross benefit to them, to the employees, and this depends on what they're doing. So some offer things like internet, others would offer things like airtime to make calls, even others offer things like laptops to allow people to work. And even others even offer things like, for example, transportation, depending on where somebody is working from. This is just generally putting everything together, that what does your employee need for them to succeed? What are the tools and what are the infrastructure that is needed in place for your employees to succeed? And then is it a benefit that the company is offering? And I've seen most companies, especially like what you mentioned with the provision of internet, most companies paying for their remote team as a benefit. But also on the flip side, as part of the hiring process, probably Candice will come in here and mention about that, is that I've seen also as a requirement for somebody to be able to be hired remotely, they need to be in a place that actually the environment allows them to be able to work remotely. So if you're in a place that there's always no power, like the connectivity is really poor, how are you going to collaborate with your teammates? Even when the company can actually pay for it, how are you going to actually do so? How are you going to have Zoom calls? How are you going to actually work if the environment that we are in does not allow you to do so? So it's two ways. So our employee needs to ensure that the environment allows them to do so. And then the other way is that what I've seen is that also some employers offer some of these as benefits to employees to more or less to just ask the question, what do you need to succeed? And if what you need to succeed is that you need an internet connectivity, then some employers offer it.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. Candice, do you have any additional comments?
Yeah, so I mean, part of like what your onboarding pack would be is the tools that you need to ensure that you're able to be productive. And so we give you a laptop, but if that means that you need data, you need a router for Wi-Fi, anything like that, we do provide that. So it's not like a hard requirement for us that you must have everything set up where you are. I think you as an individual, you want to feel comfortable that where you're working in your remote space, that you are set up. So that's one aspect of it, as Paul has mentioned, regarding the environment. But then we also try as much as possible to facilitate where we can to give you the means. So for example, in South Africa, we have a lot of load shedding, and it comes out of the blue, power cuts for like 2.5 hours, once or twice a day. And we've started giving UPSs to our employees based here so that they are connected for at least a couple of hours during that time. And this isn't something that's a cost to the employee. It's something that we take on so that we enable you to do your job and to feel comfortable doing your job. We're also very fortunate that we have offices or co-working spaces in certain hub areas where we've got a group of employees. So if you feel like your home environment is not conducive to you being productive, you have the option of going into the office. When you're going through load shedding, when you're having internet connectivity issues, you can go into the office or the co-working space so that you can get on what you need to get done. But we're also like super understanding where someone is disconnected for that period. We know it's not your fault. We understand, and we know that when you get back online, you're going to get done what you need to get done as well.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Candice. Just to move to the second question, I know we have discussed about productivity, collaboration, and how to measure success for remote teams, but I would love to make this a joint question with managing the various expectations of a global workforce, and how do you track also employee time management? So I just want to combine these questions so that we can answer them as one question so that we can save time and move to the next topic. Yeah, over to you, Candice. Maybe just tell us, how do you manage various expectations of a global workforce, and how is productivity measured when working from home, and how do you track this?
In terms of measuring productivity, we look at the outcome, the deliverables. Like, are you getting done what you set out to get done? If you're not, is it a blocker that we can help you with, or is it because you're simply not putting in the time or the work? Then that's on an individual side where they're not able to manage their time by themselves, where they are surrounded by distractions, because it can be very distracting working from home. So that's something that you as an employee need to look at internally is, why am I not able to focus? Why am I not able to be productive when I have the tools that I need? If you don't have the tools that you need, then that's another conversation to be had. So I think it's just looking at, because like I said before, we don't time track, we don't micromanage, but if you use like project management functions or tools, then you're able to track the progress and the status of certain tasks and projects. So it's always a good idea to do that as well, to collaborate as a team and have a bit of like a project management process in place. And then in terms of just the global workforce, this was mentioned earlier as well, I think by Vamsi, was the different time zones that we work in. This is something that is going to definitely have a direct impact on how people collaborate. And there needs to be so much communication and over communication about the different time zones. Like, You need to block it in your calendar. You need to make it visible when you are online, when you're not online, so that there isn't the opportunity for anyone to not understand and to impose on what your personal time actually is. I think where possible, it's a good idea to have core hours. And during these core hours where times overlap, could be when you get together to have those meetings, to have the critical conversations and to collaborate as a team. But otherwise, it's really about each person in their various locations to be responsible for their work. I think we need to really give our employees that accountability and give them I would say, empower them to be accountable for their work, for their productivity. Even in the work of in office space, you don't want to micromanage people. It's not conducive to being productive, to team morale. No one wants that environment. So I think to an extent, we need to make sure that we're actually enabling our people to work remotely. If they need coaching, then we need to provide that coaching. If they need mentorship, we need to look at how we can provide that. For people where working remotely, it's completely new, they're going to struggle. And we need to understand that and be ready for that and be able to guide them and help them through that.
Thank you so much, Candice. That's a really great sentiment. Just in the same question, I would like to direct this to Vamsi. How do you manage teams across time zones? I know Multiplier have employees across different African countries. So just let us know how your team manages these teams.
Right. No, definitely. And before that, I would also love to take a crack at the expectations of a global workforce. There's quite a lot of learnings that we have personally seen that we have incorporated in our product as well, because the trends are happening. So, some tangible expectations that a lot of the global workforces have is that, am I getting the same kind of benefits, or am I getting the same kind of treatment as my peers who are located in a different country, right? Because that's not very easy to manage all the time. Every country's labor laws are different. Every country's schedules are different. Holidays are different. Currencies, fluctuations, all of that, right? So it's become super important to have company level policies for a lot of things like compensation, the work benefits, what kind of laptops you provide, what is the budget allowance that you have for your work from home setup, what is the kind of insurance that you get when you're working. So all of these things, they need to be as global and as at a company level as possible, instead of trying to go and say that, hey, you know what, this is the most common occurrence in this country, so I'm going to give you this particular insurance benefit, or hey, this is how much the laptops cost in this country, but I'm not going to be able to afford that because it's higher. It just won't work. The expectations won't match. They will clearly ask their manager, hey, how come I'm getting a low-end laptop just because I'm living in this country, right? So I think managing those tangible expectations also becomes extremely important for long-term retention. Yeah, sorry, to your actual question, in terms of how to manage teams across time zones, honestly, very, very tricky. I don't think we have completely figured this out ourselves as well. So one thing we do is obviously we have a time zone calendar where we see which time zones our employees are located in, and what's the current time and what are their working times. This can be, there are multiple tools in the market which lets you connect to your Slack or email, or can automatically lay out this chart of who is located in what time zone and what's the current time over there. So that gives you a good idea whether that person has started work, or it's a good time to talk to them, etc. On top of that, I believe if you can split into the 4 or 5 major time zones and have some level of sustainable teams in those time zones, it would help, rather than having 1 or 2 people in North America and then the rest of the team completely 12 hours away in Asia, right? That would be extremely difficult to manage. So if you're really going to be hiring in multiple time zones, the easiest way to make that work is to have 1 person in this team, 1 person in this team, and 1 person in the other team, all in a similar time zone, at least, maybe a couple of hours of difference is fine. But this way they have peers, they have buddies they can talk to if they are stuck, and they don't have to wait for 8 hours for the rest of the team to wake up. It's not very difficult to crack that. In fact, I believe that if put in the right effort, companies can structure themselves this way.
Thank you so much for that, Vamsi. Let's hear from Paul. Any sentiments regarding this?
So I think I wanted to just add about what Vamsi finished on, that I think probably the best way, especially when you're starting, is that to have your teams in adjacent time zones, so that you don't have somebody working on the farther side of the west and someone else working on the farther side of the east. I think that one can be a very big challenge, especially when trying to figure out how you want to do this. So I think that helps where you have structured time zones, at least where there are times that are actually working hours are actually colliding, where let's say you probably you have like 5 or 4, even 4 hours where both of the team members are actually working and it's daytime on their side. I think that helps in terms of now continuously learning and probably adding other time zones that are a bit outside your core time zone. So I think that is super important. But as everybody is saying, I don't think most people have cracked it, and probably it will take time as people figure out how to best manage this.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. We have one of our attendees who would like to contribute or ask a question. I'll just allow for the participant to talk. Over to you, Navin.
Yeah, thank you, Navin here. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can hear you.
So just giving you a little bit brief about myself. I provide employer for record service for India for clients from USA and Europe. So my question is, we currently manage around 90 employees, and how do we make sure that everybody is logging on daily basis and completing their required time? I mean, the end client might have a person who is making sure that the employee is logging in, doing his daily work. But as a service provider with 90 or 100 employees, how do I make sure that everybody is logging and working for that specific client? If the gentleman from Multiplier can answer this, I would appreciate it.
Over to you, Vamsi.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, Navin. Thanks for that question. So I can talk from our experience. Firstly, we are also a EOR provider, but we work on a slightly different model where we do not performance manage any of the employees that are getting hired through our platform. We just provide a compliance and payroll as a product. But to answer your question, what worked for us at Multiplier, I can talk about that for sure. So 2 things. One is that every week our team members update their working schedule of when they're going to be online and when they're going to be available for calls if needed, and when they'll be able to quickly get back on Slack, etc. So these timings, we try to define them as early as possible, and we try to stick to them so that they're online at least on those times, right? So this is one easy way. If somebody is not honoring something, they will get flagged out, because you don't have to be very top down about this. I feel like your team members will notice everybody's collaborating with each other. So in that scenarios, then of course you will have to take some disciplinary action for sure.
Okay, so couple of flags or 2-3 flags, then you send a notification to that employee.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, get them on a call, understand if they're facing any issues, whether maybe it's an internet connectivity issue or something, but at least, have that communication going and understand what their problems are. If they're just not motivated, then of course you'll have to do something about it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your answer.
No worries.
Thank you so much for that. I think we're now going to the right direction. So moving forward, I would like to talk about team building. I know this team building covers a lot of things, especially on the culture side of the company, at the same time, performance side. So there's several questions that were actually asked by some of the attendees. Number one, that is the how to engage and motivate employees in the remote environment. I believe this question we have already tackled. Secondly is how to get opportunities and learn about remote teams. Third, disciplinary process and efficiency management. So I would love to give this opportunity to Paul to talk about how to get opportunities and learn about remote work, especially if it's for a company who are looking to expand in different African countries. And also the third question, I'll take it to Candice, disciplinary process, efficiency management. Just tell us how you conduct your disciplinary actions so that it can actually assist some of the HRs and people operations who are in the call. Over to you, Paul.
So I think the sooner companies realize that remote work is here to stay with us, the earlier the better. So if a company is not already thinking or trying to figure out how to have their teams distributed, I think they're going to wake up one day and realize that no one wants to probably work with them. So, but having said that, it's super difficult to switch from, let's say, full in office to getting to working remotely, especially when now you bring the complexities or where your teams are not actually working in the same country. Now you start bringing in the issue of people working in different countries. Even go a step further, people working in different countries, different time zones. So that becomes a little bit harder because number one, you need to learn what are the labor laws in those countries, what are the compliance requirements in those countries, how are you able to still move the kind of packages that you're offering employees in your current country and offer the same in other countries? Are they even meeting the probably minimum requirements in that new country that you want to hire an employee from? So it's really complex and it can really be distracting. But the good news is that there are players that can allow you to be able to do that faster. People like us, people like Multiplier, where you're able to work with partners that already have built that infrastructure for you to be able to hire employees and manage their compliance and payrolls without you having to really go through the pain of actually doing that. I think, in my opinion, that's probably the easiest way that a company can actually move their teams or have their distributed team across various countries, because what it does, it actually removes the pain, the hassle that you really have to go through. Then what is only needed of you is to actually identify an employee that aligns to your culture, that aligns to the skill sets that you're looking for. And then having a third party help you with onboarding and managing their compliance. And then the other work is for you just to support them and make sure that they excel in your company. So I think there are enough information online that would allow companies to be able to move their teams across board. I'm happy to have a side chat with anybody who's especially looking to have their teams distributed across the continent. In Africa, we are able to support across almost all countries currently. So happy to have a conversation and probably share our experiences on how you can go about that. So yeah, but the long and short of it is that probably you need to work with the players who are the employer of record service providers.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. Over to you, Candice. You can talk about disciplinary process and employee retention. But just before you talk about that, as Paul said earlier, if you have any issues in regards to getting opportunities for remote work or learning more about remote work, you can reach out to Paul. After this, towards the end of the webinar, I will share an email whereby you can direct all your questions after. So Candice, over to you about disciplinary process, employee retention. At the same time, give me your sentiments about how to have employee time on full-time salary to dedicate full-time. Okay, that was quite a question from one of our attenders. Yeah, over to you.
Before I jump into the not so fun side of things, I suppose, I just want to mention or touch on something, or that Paul was talking about. So what I found is when we try to hire too fast in these jurisdictions that we're not familiar with, we miss catching all of the, I'd say, the nuances about these countries. Like there are a lot of compliance things that you need to be aware of. So my advice is, when you've identified that you want to start sourcing people from a different location that you're not familiar with, do your research upfront, because every country is different. Statutory obligations are different in every single country. And there's a lot of things that you need to understand before you even make that decision. There's a lot of costs that you need to consider before you make that decision. It shouldn't be something that deters you from investing in an employee in another location, but it's good for you to have a full understanding of what the costs are, what the legalities are, before you actually give that assurance to a candidate of, we're going to bring you on board as an employee. You never want to give that false hope, and then you're trying to get things done in the process when you've already made this verbal promise and offer to them. On the disciplinary side of things, it's important that we as people operations and even our managers have an understanding of the employment law in each of these regions that we have employees. It's not going to be a one size fits all. What happens, or the procedures that you have in your home country is not going to be the same procedure that you need to follow necessarily for an employee in another country. And any disciplinary procedure, we always need to know that we're following the proper process and that we're following it fairly. And you don't want to like have that unfairness put upon an employee in another location because you don't understand, or you're trying to fully depend on the EOR to give you all of the guidance. What I found is that it's amazing that I can turn to our EORs to ask them for advice on, how does labor law work here? If we need to follow this process, what do we do? You need to have a clear understanding of that before you even want to proceed into that disciplinary action. Because as you know, anything you say and do in that process, it will come back on you, it will come back on the business as well. And then on the other side of it, you need to have, or you would normally have, your internal company policies. For example, we've got YOCO policies that we would want to, where possible, apply to our employees in the different areas, as long as it doesn't contradict or put them at a disadvantage to what their local policies are. You can apply your internal company policies in these instances. So it depends on how you as a company want to approach disciplinary as well. At what point do you take disciplinary action? At what point do you decide, we're done giving support, we've given as much support as we can, we've invested as much time and effort into this individual, now we need to take that road. So I think with any disciplinary process, it should never be the knee-jerk reaction. It should never be the thing that you jump to first, unless it's a misconduct issue. There should always be a proper route that you follow to see, how can I support this employee before I start following the proper process. And any people operations person knows we need to follow the steps, we need to follow the process. And that's why please get in touch with your EOR legal partners and find out, and always just double check, how do I have these conversations? What is okay in that country? How do they normally have these conversations before you proceed with disciplinary actions? And then how to have employees time on full-time salary to dedicate full-time to the company. My understanding there is, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with understanding that question. Is it like, how, if you're paying someone full-time, but then they might not be working full-time because of the remote work flexibility? Is that the question? What's everyone else's understanding? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, I think that's how I understand it. Is like probably the person is trying to ask whether, how do you ensure that someone who is probably on a full-time contract is actually committing to the full-time hours. And I think my answer to that would be, is what we have been discussing earlier, is that you have to have processes in place, structures in place, and a culture that allows you to be okay and know that your people are actually working in the sense that are they actually delivering what they are supposed to deliver, because I don't think you are measuring this by time spent, which I think everyone here is saying that can be very hard. You're probably measuring this by deliverability. So are they actually delivering what they are supposed to be to have done? I think that would be probably the best way to have a full-time dedicated to working full-time for you.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I actually had an experience where we went through a crazy period. We were working, we were all just putting in the hours and you're working overtime, working through lunches. And then I mentioned this to my manager and they were like, so you work 10 hours today and tomorrow you're going to work 3 hours. And then I thought, actually, I have that flexibility. Why didn't I think of that? I'm allowed that flexibility where I can comfortably put in the hours. I can put in more hours than I need to because I want to get something done, knowing that I have the freedom to get my time back the next day, the next week. So it, like we mentioned throughout this webinar, it comes down to that trust factor as well, and understanding that your people are probably working for every one person who's maybe working less than they should, there's 5 people working longer than they should, or working through their lunches, through their supper times, through their family times. And it's allowing them that flexibility to actually get their time back and to find some kind of balance as well. So it shouldn't be like a reaction to reduce someone's salary to say, hey, you're actually working 4 days a week, we're going to be reducing your salary, unless that person really does need to work fewer days. If their priorities are so that they can't work full time, even with the flexibility provided, they just can't, then you need to have the conversation about dropping them down to fewer hours in the day, 4 days a week, and adjusting their salary accordingly.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Candice. That was a good topic and also some good insights. I believe people are taking some points home. I hope everyone is taking notes, but don't worry, this is just a reminder that we will send the recording, as well as please keep sending in your questions on the chat and Q&A box. So moving forward, I'll just move forward if there's no more question. A lot has been asked about performance management, not only for remote teams, but also for HR and payroll. So I would like Paul to take this over and just discuss something about performance management and how organizations right now are implementing this in their workforce.
I believe we have all shared on this in one way or the other during the conversation on how different teams are managing performance. So I think there are various tools out there that will allow companies to be able to do this. I think, like in our case, we use OKRs that allows us to be able to have a very, very clear vision on how the company wants to do. And what this does is that from the very high level, this is able to trickle down to everybody in the company, and they're able to see what they can do. And again, this one might not fit for everybody. So each and every company have their own way that allows them to be able to manage performance. So remote is just one way of people working, or from where people are working. So having said that, the other structural things still remain in a company. So either your team is remote, your team is in-house, you still have to figure out how you're going to actually manage performance for your teams and all the other things that are entailed in running or growing a business. So for most teams, I think in a way, remote is actually a win, in the sense that, as even work is also being disrupted, other areas are also being disrupted. So I think there are so many tools right now that can allow people to be able to manage not only their remote teams, but also in their in-house teams. I think we also spoke about trainings. I think that's another area that is getting a lot of disruption, that they are even easier ways than they were before for people to be able to support their teams from a training perspective. And that allows people to be able to really be able to figure out easier ways for them to be able to do this, because at the end of the day is that performance is about delivery, is about meeting the expectation of what is required of you, doing it on time, and actually that's the most important thing. How you do it could vary from company to company.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul, for that. Because of time, allow me to take this forward. We're going to discuss more about collaboration tools for remote teams, and I'd like to pass this over to Vamsi. Maybe Vamsi, you can just tell us something about Multiplier. What tools are you guys using for collaborating with the remote teams? Maybe you can make some suggestions so that everyone can take note of and maybe go and do a trial test.
Yes, for sure. So I think everybody knows the common tools that are currently extremely penetrated. So we use Slack majorly for our communication. It's quick, it's instant, and it lets us move extremely fast. But we also use email on a case-by-case basis. It's not good to have everything written down on Slack, because Slack is more like an instant messaging tool. So any updates, any OKR meetings, notes, team discussion notes, etc., we try to use email as much as possible, so the Slack clutter is reduced. So we use those. We use Notion for our company wiki, like I was mentioning before. On top of that, we heavily use Loom. Loom is a great product for recording quick videos, walkthroughs, demos, and whatnot. So if a customer has a complaint, we just quickly send them a Loom video on how to use our product. If one of our internal folks has a question that they need to get unblocked, the responsible person will just quickly record a Loom, maybe for like 30 seconds, and just shoot that across. I think it's a great productivity hack. If anybody hasn't tried that out, definitely check out Loom. It's very useful. Another tool which is kind of very, very good for culture building, it's called Dive. It's a Sequoia search company. It's letsdive.io. They have built a software which enables culture building in companies where there are a lot of team-based activities, games, onboarding programs that you can do with your larger team. It's very efficient to use that in a remote setting, and you can do a lot of things online and really break away from work and have into the and have a bit more social, or Friday night sessions on that tool. So I'm just going to type that out because someone was asking me in the chat.
Okay, I think many people are asking about, oh yeah, I've seen you have sent a message on the chat box where there's a tool people didn't get. It's called letsdive.io. So kindly just review. Maybe Vamsi, you can just type in the tools that you've just mentioned so that everyone can take note of. Moving forward, I'll still move to Vamsi. What are the remote team software? Okay, remote team software. Is there a software that allows people, operations, HR managers, etc., the management to manage remote teams, or rather a software that allows you to hire remote teams, or someone can just log in, read more about remote teams, hire from across any African country or across the globe. So please just take us forward. That is Vamsi, and then Paul, you can back this up.
Yes, for sure. So I think one of the most difficult aspects of managing a remote team sits with the HR and people and culture teams in the company, especially when you have a distributed team. And you need to be able to maintain a single system of record and onboard them smoothly, manage their payroll and compliance and employment contracts, benefits, etc. Relying on a product which is built for this particular use cases is really helpful. Of course, at Multiplier, we are building this out. So what we have is a single source of truth. It's a single platform which you can use to hire and onboard in any country. Where the local compliance is taken care of, the payroll compliance, statutory contributions, etc., are all taken care of automatically by the software, and you can run your monthly payroll from that in any countries, any number of currencies, all at the click of a button. Right? I think that's a great productivity tool and also actually employee experience from an employee experience standpoint, using a tool like that really makes their life easy, where they will have access to that, where they can track their salary, they can track their benefits, they can log their time off, they can raise expenses, and etc. So both from a productivity and an employee experience standpoint, using tools like Multiplier, or actually for that matter Workpay, I think is doing something very similar. That really creates the actually, there's a lot of pitfalls that you can avoid in terms of legality, in terms of employee experience, by relying on something like this, instead of going and doing your own research and trying to figure things out. Yeah, I mean, if anyone is interested, they can just book a demo on our website. I would love to walk you through what we have built and what it can do for you.
Thank you so much, Vamsi. Paul, do you have any insights about this remote team software and what Workpay can actually do?
Yeah, great. So yeah, as Vamsi is saying, I think if you want to do this faster, there's no need of going into the trouble of figuring out some of these things on your own. There are people who actually figured that already on your behalf, and you're doing that. For us, we are really specifically focusing on African continent. So if we are really looking into really getting your teams across the continent of Africa, let us know. I will also drop our contacts on how we can support you on that. But having said that, we're also working with partners like Multiplier to help you also to have your teams that are outside Africa. So you have teams, let's say in Europe, Americas, and even Asia. We are able to support that, and then we become one source of connection for you and your employees, and then your work just remains for you to just be able to focus on growing your teams, and then the compliance, the benefits, and all the payments are left to us and as a partner. We'll also be sharing our details on that or through the chat, and you can always get reach to us, and we're happy to support you guys.
Thank you so much, Paul. Because of time, allow me to move faster. We're coming to one of the last conversations, that is the tools for virtual teams. I know, Vamsi, you have said a lot, but can you contribute on this?
Yeah. So tools for virtual teams, like, the 3 or 4 tools that I mentioned, they're definitely helpful. On top of that, I think it's not just about tools. It's also actually, tool is just a mechanism. If your processes and your SOPs and your objectives are very clear, a lot of tools can help you out. So I think before thinking too much about what to buy and what's your budget and etc., I think I would suggest that everybody put some thought into what exactly they're trying to accomplish, and based on that, use the right tool. For smaller organizations, the stack that I just mentioned works out really well, but once you start growing and once you cross the 500 people mark or so, you will soon have to start upgrading. Notion may not work, you'll have to use Atlassian and etc. So yeah, I hope that helps, Daisy.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Vamsi. Just to go through the most, I think this is the most weighted topics for people. So let's discuss about remote teams challenges. I know there's some questions that have been sent on the QA chat box. Before we even start to explore these questions, there is a question that was asked about legally hire and manage employees without setting up a legal entity. And then there's a question that's on the chat box. I've seen also Vamsi has responded, but just to take you through the questions, our teams in North and Middle East, South Africa, and Saudi Arabia, and UAE. There's a client who wants to expand to Saudi Arabia and UAE, if I get the question correct. Number one, who provides the EOR services in these 2 regions, Workpay, Multiplier, both? Number 2, what is the legal signing agreement process to get things started? And number 3, what is the responsibility of an EOR in the employment process? Just before we answer that, Paul, maybe you can take us through this. how we can employ talent across African countries, and also briefly talk about the partnership with Multiplier and how we can assist anyone who tries to expand.
Thanks, Daisy. I don't know how much time we have. So as I mentioned in my last statement is that we have already built the infrastructure to allow companies that are hiring across the continent, that is in Africa. So regardless of where you want to hire, are they from South Africa to Morocco, or probably Tunisia is the most north country in Africa. So we're able to allow you to be able to hire in all those countries. The person who is asking about North Africa, yes, we're able to support you on that. But what we have done is that we have realized, or we appreciate that people want to have sort of a global workforce. So we are always on the lookout for partners that are doing similar things like us, who are aligned to what we are trying to build for companies. And that's how we have Multiplier. We work with Multiplier. They help us in especially hiring or helping companies to manage their teams in Asia, Europe, and the Americas. So if you want to hire or you have employees across the globe, just reach out to us or reach out to Vamsi in Multiplier, and we definitely be able to support you in setting up your teams from wherever you want them to work from.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Paul. I also, Vamsi had really explained about this. I can see most of the questions have been answered here. So I'll just give two people a chance to ask any question that we have not tackled. But before I give it to two people, how do you manage the tax laws for different countries? I'll take this to Vamsi. Because it was one of the most asked questions actually when people are expanding. So how do you manage the tax laws? Is it through the partner that you've used, if it's Workpay, if it's Multiplier, or how do they go about it?
No, very good, very, very good question actually. So there are two ways you can employ someone in a country. So like Candice was mentioning earlier, you can employ them as a independent contractor, where they will be hired as kind of like on a free floating agreement with your company. And the second way is to hire through EOR. What EOR means that is you don't have to set up your legal entity in that country. You can just use the entity that was set up by the EOR and hire on top of that entity compliantly. But that employee will be working with you through a separate form of contract. So the first way, if you hire as an independent contractor, you are not responsible for handling their taxes. The employees are responsible for filing their own taxes with the relevant government authority and making sure the payments go on time. It's a very tricky relationship. We generally do not recommend companies hire a lot of independent contractors, especially if they are working with you full time, because you may be breaking some compliance that you don't know about, and you may get into trouble if some form of audit happens. So this is called employee misclassification. Companies get fined for this. Like, for example, Uber got fined a ton of money in Europe for misclassifying their drivers as contractors, whereas they were working with Uber full time, right? But so alternatively, using a compliant EOR solution is a much better alternative. So the EOR company, because they are employing the person, your team member on your behalf, the EOR company will be responsible for managing the payroll, the statutory contributions, the withholding tax, any other filings that need to be done with the local government to be able to sort of like continue that employment relationship with that with the employee. This way, there is no headache on you as a company or the employee to figure out what are the tax laws in my country. The EOR will automatically file that for you. They will withhold that particular tax amount from the salary and send across the rest of the salary to the employee on a monthly basis. So this is how taxes can be managed when you are hiring internationally.
Okay. Thank you so much. Vamsi, were you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. In case of any further questions, please drop them on the Q&A box or chat box. I'll just take two questions from the participants. That is Navin. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I wanted to know, how does the onboarding work on the platforms like Multiplier? since there are going to be different companies and each company having a different onboarding process, so how does it work on this platform? I mean, is it automated, or somebody from the specific company, calls the employee and, explains about the company culture, etc.? So if you can throw some light on that.
Right, definitely. So onboarding, I think the easiest way is to split into two parts. The first onboarding is more from a from a documentation / legality / all the paperwork perspective. And the second part of onboarding is actually onboarding them within your company and training them up and discussing about the company culture and etc. etc. What we have found out that works best is that to let the second part of the puzzle stay with the company, because everybody has different, like you mentioned, everybody has different policies. But the first part of the puzzle can be automated to a very good extent. For each country, you can just take note of all the payroll laws in that country, the way contracts are created in that country, the kind of KYC that is done in that country. And you can just put all of that into a very simple SaaS platform. I would love to walk you through a demo of our product later. If you could just drop me an email, Navin, I can definitely show you how that works.
Sure. I would love that. But just to let you know, we are providing the similar service, but for only India. And we do not have any platform as such. So, we are managing a lot of things offline. So, if you can, just guide us in any way, it would be really helpful.
Sure, I'm more than happy to collaborate. We do collaborate with a lot of EOR companies in various parts of the world. If you could just drop me an email, we can get connected and I'll introduce you to my partnerships team.
Yeah, definitely. I'll do that. Thank you.
Perfect. No worries.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Navin. I hope you'll be sorted. I'm sure you will. Last question before we close. Other than that, you can drop all your inquiries either on remote@myworkpay.com or you can send a direct inbox to Vamsi. I think all the contact information are on the chat box. You can just have a look. Any final sentiments from the participants? Just drop your comments on the chat box and the Q&A. And then we'll close this with Candice, who will just give us last sentiments about managing remote teams.
Daisy, is there anything in particular? Is there a particular topic?
How will you encourage the rest of the people who are trying to expand to remote teams? At the same time, how would you encourage people in operations or people who are HR managers who are having a difficulty in managing remote teams? So basically just an encouragement. If they were reluctant to proceed with people having work in remote team environment, they can proceed, or just give them something to encourage them.
I think having remote teams is an amazing opportunity to encourage diversity in our organizations. It's such a knowledge sharing opportunity as well to have people from different cultures, different geographies, different backgrounds, and learnings as well, and experiences to come into your business, into this one space where everyone can learn and knowledge share and collaborate. And it's such an opportunity for us to also celebrate that diversity and that diverse way of thinking. You never want to have, this groupthink mentality in your organization. You want people to think out of the box. You want people to come with different experiences and learnings as well. So I'd say look at that as a big opportunity to grow your business, to grow and focus on employee engagement as well. It's such an opportunity for us as people operations to really get into how do we engage our employees? How do we keep our finger on the pulse? How do we check that, everyone is okay, everyone is happy that we're doing the right thing? It's so much easier to manage when you're in office because you see people all the time. And I think maybe it makes us a bit complacent. It makes it a bit too easy for us to manage that employee satisfaction and their journey. So the minute we move to this remote environment, we need to put a little bit more work in. We need to educate ourselves more as the people team to know, how do we manage them? How do we manage the expectations and make their journey as good as it would be if they were in office? So it takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of, I'd say, networking as well, to see what do other companies do? How do they manage it? How do they manage onboarding as well? I mean, that's like the key. One of the key things I find is how you introduce that person to the organization is through that onboarding. How do you bring them into the business? And for me personally, it's been a great opportunity to expand my knowledge on employment law in countries that I did not know of before. It's given me such a new passion for it. No one loves employment law, not really. Some of us, we want to specialize in it, but it's a tricky thing. And it's once you've mastered your local employment law, you're not thinking, I'm going to go and expand my knowledge and then learn how to discipline people in another country or how to treat people. So it's such an opportunity for us to learn the different labor laws out there, because you actually see that some other countries are maybe doing things a little bit better than you are. There are things within their policies, within their laws that are mandatory that you could implement in your local jurisdictions as well, because it's a great perk, it's a great benefit. So there are just different ways that countries treat employees, and it's a good opportunity for us to learn from that to improve our internal policies as well.
Thank you so much, Candice. Thank you so much, everyone, also for joining. Thank you for taking time to join the webinar. I know we have surpassed the time. So it means it was a really good webinar. Thank you so much. Please, you can leave your comments at remote@myworkpay.com if you have any issue, any challenge. At the same time, if you want to reach out to Vamsi, you can also reach out to his email. All the information are on the chat box and Q&A box. So thank you so much, everyone. I'd like to close this meeting unless anyone has a questions from the panelists, anyone has a remark before I close. Paul, do you have anything?
Yeah, so I think for me is that to reiterate that remote is here with us. And if you are just restricting yourself in hiring people in one country, you're actually missing a lot in terms of the talent that's out there. People who can really help you in moving your business faster, even to higher heights. So I think if a company is not already thinking about how to figure out the remote work, I think it's a high time that that was incorporated in their structures or in their growth agendas. They need to be able to do that. And then the other thing is that you don't need to really figure out some of these things yourself. We have players who can help you to do some of these things, and we'd be super excited to help you guys in your growth or as you expand your teams across various countries. And you already have our contacts, reach out to us, and happy to support. Otherwise, it was great having this conversation, and I hope all of us have been able to learn one or two things.
Thank you so much, Paul. We will send the recording to your emails, and at the same time, we will upload it on our YouTube channel, so you can have you can go through it again. Any final remarks, Vamsi, before I close?
No, Daisy, I think largely covered everything, but just want to thank you for setting this up. And it's great meeting you, Candice and Paul. Really learned quite a lot of new things from you folks. I had a great session, folks.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much. We appreciate for joining, and we hope that you learned so much on this webinar. Have a good day, and we will send over the recording to your emails. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everyone. Bye.